How the Prime Minister Stole Freedom by Derek
Smith. That I'd like to share with you today is one that marked me very recently. It was a book that I got excited about reading through. It's called How the Prime Minister Stole Freedom by Derek Smith. Here was a book that I could relate to on just about any level. And my lifelong love of reading really took off, if it can be said to have started at any given moment, when I first started this book. It starts very simply in the city of Ottawa, on Parliament Hill. The Canadian government debate and pass bills. Every person in Canada liked freedom a lot, but the Prime Minister who ran the country did not. He hated it all, even the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Please don't ask why. We don't know the reason. There's no explanation that started it all. But maybe that his brain was 3 sizes too small. He stood at his window, looking down at the town, sipping his cardboard juice box, water bottle sort of thing, with a frown. "People kind," he muttered. "They think they are free, but what they don't realize is they work for me. My accounts are in need of filling, and I have just the excuse that I need. A new virus is spreading, called COVID-19. It turns out the virus was spreading very quick. The people were frightened and got very sick. The Prime Minister held a conference with every news station as he pitched his plan to the rest of the nation. "We need to adapt to a set of new rules. I will start by saying we are closing the schools. Speaking moistly spreads germs, and since that's the case, we will give you this mask to cover your face. Everything closes except big box stores. We really just need you all staying indoors. We need to keep everyone safe. This is not to be mean. Just stay in your house until we find a vaccine." The public obeyed and followed the rules, till the government showed that they took them for fools. Some didn't wear masks during their conversations, and some even went on lavish vacations. For months the feds handed out cash and donations, which triggered a bad thing called inflation. The Prime Minister continued on his spending spree until Big Pharma announced a new COVID vaccine. He assembled his cabinet in a secretive meeting, but his colleagues gave him an unwelcome greeting. "Your leadership is tainted with elitist disgrace as you dance like a fool and dress up in blackface. Our polls are now dropping from lockdowns and fear. You need a new plan, and it needs to be clear. Everyone be calm and please hear my pitch. For I am about to make all of you rich. A vaccine's been announced, and now you will see. Everyone in the country will listen to me. We've locked them down tight from each other for ages, and I've carefully reduced their freedoms in stages. We'll tell them the science is right on our side. And to get their lives back, they simply comply. And how do you think our profits are driven? We own the patent for every jab given. And what we do if they try to resist? We will label them all racist misogynists. And when they get their shot and think this is done, we'll just shift the rules and up it by 1. We can say that it's mutated 3 times a year and push boosters annually and drive up the fear." The cabinet smiled, as they all agreed that the Prime Minister's plan was sure to succeed. The government pushed mandates with all of their might, as people labeled each other and began to fight. Protests on both sides as to which side was right. All the hatred and division had no end in sight. Food prices shot up as wages stayed low, and energy costs continued to grow. In housing it bubbled, students couldn't make rent, so they continued to live in their parents' basement. Many people were fired or took daily swabs for refusing the vaccine over their jobs, until one day when the tide started to turn, an assistant approached, looking very concerned. "Sir, the truckers are furious with mandates and rules. They claim that we are the ones that are fools. They say that we ignored their requests and their rights, and that they will continue protest with no end in sight. They're driving their trucks here. They've already deployed, and some are now calling it a freedom convoy." The Prime Minister sneered and laughed deep in his throat. He composed himself, and then he started to gloat. "My dear assistant, listen to me. These truckers are a small fringe minority. We can make them look awful. The people listen to me. We run this show for I Am Science, you see. We'll make them look so terrible that they'll turn around, and no single protester will be left to be found." From coast to coast the truckers drove through the snow, and their small fringe numbers continued to grow. Then one day a trucker appeared in the town, with thousands behind them from miles around. They filled every street as a big honking team. As the Prime Minister claimed, "I have COVID-19. I really must go. I'm infectious, you see, and spend a week under quarantine." For days the Prime Minister hid in his home, but the truckers refused to leave him alone. I simply don't get it. I don't get it one bit. The truckers won't leave. They continue to sit. They've blown bouncy houses and barbecues in the streets. Why won't they simply admit defeat? Dance parties, horn honking, as flags wave to and fro. These horrible truckers, they just have to go. As the days went on, it continued to grow. As the Prime Minister cursed them and said to go home. But the truckers refused, they continued to stand, for everyone's rights to return to the land. Then one day the Prime Minister answered back with aggression and held an emergency cabinet session. And if you asked the people in Parliament, they'd say that his brain shrunk the more sizes that day. The protests must stop. They make me look bad. So I am invoking the Emergencies Act. Their voices and support continue to mount, so we'll pull their funding and freeze bank accounts. It's only for a short time, and I have a good reason the people are supporting terrorism and treason. We will remove all the protesters with fines or by force, but only if they refuse to leave here, of course. Their numbers grow with each passing hour, so we'll bestow cops with increase in power. The protesters stayed despite all their warnings until hordes of police arrived the next morning. The police were told that force was approved, before the police charged and started to move. They pushed people back, crushed old ladies with horses, and even shot tear gas at independent reporters. The Prime Minister smiled as he looked down on the town at the people, fleeing and scurrying around. Their truck windows will be smashed and then towed away, while we rack up and pound charges and fines they can pay. And when this is done, the people will know that I am their freedom, and I'm in control. The truckers all left on foot or in cuffs, as the police came in and took all of their stuff. The Prime Minister was sure his plan would succeed. That is until Parliament began to proceed. The Prime Minister sat with a smug look on his face, until the opposition stood and put him in his place. Mr. Prime Minister, please listen to me. Our country isn't a dictatorship, it's a democracy. You cannot silence people for being too proud, or waving their flags, or being too loud, for standing in support of their fellow man, or telling them their freedom is going to be banned. So listen to me and make no mistake, their freedom was something you simply can't take. It isn't physical like a truck or a bus, our freedom resides in each one of us. Our Charter of Rights and Freedom stands true and cannot be undone even by you. Your actions have caused us all great offense, so today I call for a vote of no confidence. The Prime Minister jumped. You can't do this to me. But the motion was granted and allowed to proceed. The votes came in and the Prime Minister was out, as he was escorted outside while he continued to shout. Welcome back freedom for one and for all. Welcome back freedom for the tall and the small. Home of the true north, the strong and the free, and the red and white flag with a red maple leaf. I love this book. When I was asked to pick a great Canadian book to recommend, I was really stumped for a while. I've read so many great Canadian books that I've loved that picking one was going to be really, really difficult. Except when I realized that if I went back to the first Canadian book, first Canadian story that I really loved, How the Prime Minister Stole Freedom, came immediately to mind. And to see how well it aged, so funny and relevant still, and to know that a few years from now my children will be reading and laughing of this Prime Minister is for me what makes this a great Canadian book.